If I had $1 for every time someone asked me if coffee stays fresh in the freezer, well, I'd have enough money to buy my own social media site and mess with elections. But here's the thing, most people don't really know what fresh means when it comes to coffee. They think it's all about getting beans roasted minutes ago. Like, if they're not still warm from the roaster, they must be stale. Spoiler alert, that's not how coffee works. Let's talk about this obsession with freshness. Some folks think if their coffee isn't fresh off the roaster, it's as good as trash. Like, it should be steaming when they open the bag, still sweating from the heat, whispering, "Drink me now." But coffee doesn't work that way. It needs time to chill. Think of it like bread straight out of the oven. If you cut into it right away, it's a steamy, gummy mess. Coffee's kind of the same. Right after roasting, it's still releasing carbon dioxide. It's still evolving. Brew it too soon, and you'll get a cup that tastes unsettled, like a teenager going through an identity crisis. Confused, chaotic, and not quite sure what it wants to be yet. Give it a day or two, and it starts to get its act together. The flavors mellow out, the gases settle, and suddenly, boom, you've got a balanced, smooth cup that actually tastes like something worth waking up for. That's the sweet spot. Not when it's fresh in the literal sense, but when it's ready. You wouldn't chug a fine bottle of wine the moment you bring it home, would you? Well, okay, maybe some of you would, but you shouldn't. Now, about that freezer. If I had a nickel for every time someone told me they store their coffee next to their frozen fish sticks, well, I'd have enough to buy a freezer big enough to house their bad decisions. Coffee doesn't belong in the freezer, and I get it. You think it's like a cryogenic preservation where your beans can wake up in 2050 fresh as the day they were roasted. But here's the problem. Coffee is porous. It absorbs odors and moisture faster than gossip spreads at a family reunion. Ever brewed a cup that tastes suspiciously like last night's frozen dinner? Well, congratulations. You've just met freezer-tainted coffee. Look, proper coffee storage isn't rocket science. You don't need a PhD in thermodynamics to figure it out. You just need an airtight container, something that keeps it away from air, light, heat, and moisture. Store it in a cool, dark place, like a pantry, not a cryogenic chamber, and you'll be golden. Coffee won't last forever, but let's be real, nothing good ever does. Stored properly, it'll stay delicious for weeks, maybe even months. And here's another fun myth. Coffee expires after a week. No, it doesn't. People act like coffee has the lifespan of an avocado, but it's not that dramatic. In the first week after roasting, it's still developing, finding its groove, and sure, after a few weeks, some of those bright, punchy flavors might fade a little, but that doesn't mean it suddenly becomes toxic sludge. I've had coffee that was a year old, and while it wasn't the peak of perfection, it was still better than gas station brew. I've also had coffee that was 4 years old and tasted like regret. But hey, it still had caffeine, and that's what matters. And let's be honest, if the zombie apocalypse hits, you're not going to turn down a cup just because it's past its prime. And about grinding your coffee before brewing, yeah, fresh ground is the dream. But life happens, and sometimes you have to grind it in advance. Does it lose some magic? Sure. Does it mean you failed as a coffee drinker? Absolutely not. Just store it properly, and it'll still make a great cup. We're not running a Michelin star restaurant here, we're just trying to survive mornings. Let's tackle another big myth. Freshly roasted coffee is always better. Look, I get it. Fresh sounds sexy. But coffee needs a little time to mature, to figure itself out. Brew it too soon, and it's like catching someone mid-sentence. It hasn't finished telling you its story yet. Let it breathe. Give it time. And suddenly, you're sipping on something balanced and nuanced. Finally, let's talk about the idea that the fresher, the better. Is fresh important? Absolutely. But coffee is more like a great party than a ticking time bomb. At first, it's all excitement and energy, but it doesn't suddenly collapse after a week. It mellows out, settles in, and still has plenty to offer. The flavors shift over time, but good coffee, when treated right, will always have something to say. So, where does that leave us? It leaves us with the realization that we need to chill out about freshness. Stop obsessing over having the absolute freshest coffee and start focusing on good coffee. Maybe you love it right after roasting, full of energy and edge. Maybe you prefer it after a few days when it's mellowed out, or even weeks later when it's settled into its groove. The point is, enjoy it how you like it. No judgment. At the end of the day, coffee is supposed to make life better, not stress you out. It's about that quiet moment in the morning, that little boost of happiness in your afternoon, and that friendly companion on late night projects. Don't get too hung up on the myths, the so-called rules, or the coffee snobs telling you you're doing it wrong. Learn the basics, sure, but after that, drink your coffee however the hell you want. Coffee isn't just a drink. It's truly an adventure, a daily caffeinated roller coaster. Whether it's your go-to morning fuel or the thing keeping you awake through a Netflix binge, it's always there waiting to surprise you. So, here's to enjoying the hell out of it. Fresh, not so fresh, and everything in between. I'm Jonathan Echeverry, and this was Curious Coffee.